Mm-hmm. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. We are live. I almost lost my own Zoom link. We're going to get everybody in here in just a sec. Okay. Okay. Hi, ladies. Welcome. The chat box is open if you want to use that. I'm going to have everybody on mute just to kind of preserve the integrity of the replay, so there isn't a lot of background noise. And I'm going to see who's going to jump in here. And for those watching live on or in the Momentum of Flow Facebook group, hello. Okay. I just want to make sure I have the volume turned down. Okay. Hi, ladies. So I've got two places open where you can comment and ask questions. So yes, this is going to be me talking. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Gail. Those of you in the Zoom, those of you in the Facebook group, I'm going to be kind of going back and forth, a little ping pong action, and try to get everybody's questions and comments here. So welcome. Do you desire it or do you need it? Masterclass. So there we go, unmuted in there. So no background noise. So I'm going to do some talking, some discussion. I'm going to talk about the difference between need, egoic need versus desire, that these come from two different vibrations, two different energies, and how to be able to better suss that out in the body, and also teach the body how to hold those energies differently of desire and need, how to process need as ego, fear, and be able to move it and guide it through the body. But we're going to talk about also desires, that these are actually what propel your soul and human evolution forward, and how important desires are for our life. They're essential to our life. So those of you here live, if you have questions, because I do want to leave a portion for this after I talk for Q&A. So if you want to put questions in the chat box, if you want to put questions in the Facebook group, you're welcome to do either. And I will get to everyone's questions. And even if I don't get to them live in the call, I will get to them in the replay in the Facebook group. And I will try to accommodate everyone here. So there are going to be some new ladies joining us who are new to my orbit. Oops, there I am. Who are new to my orbit, new to my world. And so super quick intro for those of you who are really new to me and to what I do. I am Kathryn Massell. I am an elevated consciousness coach. I am a soulpreneur, which means I am a soul-led entrepreneur. I'm an author of 3 books. I am a speaker. I'm an author. I mentioned that. I'm a mentor. I'm a teacher. I'm a course content creator. I am an energy healer. I started with energy healing over 20 years ago. I had a brick and mortar office in San Francisco once upon a time where I was doing Reiki, teaching classes, doing hands-on energy healing, and also hypnotherapy. I was a hypnotherapist, trained hypnotherapist, practicing in this office as well. And I've worn many, many hats since then. And this has been my sole enterprise. I've definitely been a Renaissance woman and done a lot of things. I've been in hospitality forever. I was a bartender for a really long time. I've done everything there is to do in restaurants and hotels. And I was doing that all while I was building my business that I have today. And today, this is all I do. This is all I want to do. This is not just my livelihood and my career. It is my lifeblood. It is my passion. And it is my mission to be of the highest service to my community as I possibly can. And my brilliance, my gifts really center around stretching people and really helping to push the envelope on people's current levels of perspective and levels of consciousness, their personal awareness and how they recognize themselves in their own lives, how they recognize themselves in the world at large. I offer, yes, very spiritual perspectives, but always in a grounded and kind of leveled way. And this is important because there is I was going to say teachings, but they're really misteachings because they kind of miss the mark that we're not here to evolve without our humanness. We're here to teach our human how to evolve, okay, into our higher spiritual destiny. And that means that the body goes with. And I still see it. I'm surprised how many times I see this kind of energy that discards the body as being lesser than, of being a lower frequency, of, yes, it exists in a level of density, absolutely. But this is your focal point of attention. This is your locus of attention at this time in your life. This is where the bulk of your attention is as a multidimensional soul who's involved in many timelines, lifetimes, dimensions, phases, and experiences all at once. Because everything in terms of spiritual time is happening now. There is no past or future. Those are illusions. So everything is happening now. You're actually involved in a lot of different places, a lot of different things at once. But the bulk of your attention as a soul being is here right now in this earth experience. There is nothing to be discounted about that. There is nothing to disregard. You are here for a reason. You are bringing certain gifts that you are meant to bear forth in this lifetime. And because of the things that we've learned and the story that we tell about who we are, which is a huge misperception based on an ego need, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you are underserving yourself. Most of the women I work with are underserving themselves because they're not valuing their authenticity. They're not valuing their gifts. They're not valuing the fact that this is not some random cosmic lottery that allows you to land here in this incarnation as a human in 3D Earth at this time, in this very auspicious timeline on planet Earth, where so much change is taking place and at a very accelerated rate. So this is a very exciting time to be alive because the Earth and humans on this Earth have never really been in this vibration before. We haven't experienced this time of ascending into higher consciousness and awareness. And you may look around and say, well, Kathryn doesn't look that way. Well, here's the thing. It is a cosmic give and take energy. It is a cosmic exchange. If we want to move into something higher and better, that means everything that doesn't match that vibration has to give way. And so we are in a clearinghouse type of energy where the things that don't match where we're going have to go because they don't align with the frequency of what comes next. Now, that's true on a planetary level. That's true as a collective, but it's very, very true in your life. It's very, very true in your life. And how do you know this? Because you probably wouldn't be here right now listening to me if you didn't recognize in your own life and have this level of self-awareness, which you need to pat yourself on the back for, that something ain't right. Something doesn't click. There's a puzzle piece missing. And it's not to say that you're not whole. It's just a level of awareness that you haven't fully connected with yet. That's all. And so what I'm really good at is being able to help those people out there feeling much like you do right now to connect those dots, to bring that puzzle piece in. Not that it isn't there, it's all in front of you. It's all inside you is a better way to say it. There's just something you're not connected to yet. Yet being the operative word. So that's my little intro. And so let's talk about ego need. Okay. So the reason I titled this masterclass, Do You Desire It or Do You Need It? Is because these are two very, very different vibrations. Now, you might desire greatly a living space that's more hospitable to you and what you need, something that feels like more of a sanctuary, something that feels like you can settle into, someplace you can nest in, and it feels good for your soul to have it. But you might have a very real need for it because maybe your lease is up, maybe you're getting kicked out, maybe the person you're living with is an absolute disaster and you can no longer be in this situation. It's simply untenable. Desire and need have different vibrations. You might desire and need something. You might have those feelings about something that you would like to have in your life, desire and need both playing a part. But one is always going to be greater than the other. And whatever is the greater energy within you is the one that always wins out. That's the one that always rules the day. That's the energy that's always driving the bus of your life, in other words, okay? Am I making sense so far? Let's see. Okay, hello, hello. I'm not seeing any comments. I'm going to keep checking, so I'll keep stopping myself to check the comments and see how everybody's doing. So when you desire something versus need something, it comes from a different place within you. It comes from the place of connecting with your soul, your spirit. I call it the God self, which is the highest vantage point of view. It's the vantage point of view that can see many, many different perspectives at once and isn't filtered by the story of the ego. It sees you in your entirety, in other words. And this is the only aspect of you that knows you in other timelines, lifetimes, dimensions, realities, spaces, etc. Okay. It sees all the moving parts of you. Okay. And when we are informed by this perspective, what we want to enrich our life, to enhance our life, to bring needed improvements, desired improvements forward, it will just feel like a flow. It will feel like a gentle nudge, sometimes not so gentle, but a push, a nudge. From this vantage point, you're able to see what I call breadcrumbs, signposts, little things where your soul is speaking to you because it's subtle frequency. It's not yelling and screaming in your head like the ego does, because it doesn't need to do that. It doesn't need to fight for your attention. But this is the part of you that is always telling you, hey, this is your destiny. This is what we came here to experience. You as human and me as soul, we can join forces and have the same trajectory. We can have the same destination. We can have the same feelings and thoughts about who we are. We can value ourselves. We can see our gifts without the filters of ego or the filter of need. We can see that actually the place that we call Earth can be a solution-based realm instead of a problem-based realm. The things that we are facing that are challenges, we can see what I call those gifts in the garbage instead of seeing an obstacle at every turn. When you're in the vantage point of your soul, you tend to have more of a levity in how you view life and how you embrace life and how you can call things in and make them your own. It'll feel a little more seamless. It'll feel like you can create some flow with that, some momentum with that. Not to say every day will be easy, because it isn't. I'm very aligned with my soul connection, but I'm also aware of a lot of the shit that I'm holding on to that doesn't align with that part of me, that are just stories, old beliefs, old thought patterns, habits of thinking and feeling, stories that I've inherited, etc. So when you're in this place of understanding that the little nudges and breadcrumbs and signposts that you might see everywhere, and they're like, oh, what could it feel like to kind of follow where this takes me? That's your soul leading you. That's your soul saying, there's something here to look at. There's something to consider. That's your soul saying, trust me enough that if I'm showing you this, it's for a reason. It's not just random. And when we are so much in ego need, What we tend to do is filter a lot of this stuff out, these gentle nudgings, these subtle frequencies that are like, hey, look over here. Pay attention to this person. You might want to read this post. You might want to look at what this person is doing. You might want to see what you're doing in this conversation or this adversarial moment that you find yourself in again. It's something to look at here. Why does this keep coming up? That's your soul saying those things, okay? And this is the part of you that's constantly inviting you to look at life as these things coming in that make you feel good, that make you say, hey, what could it feel like if I pursued this? What could it feel like if I just kind of dip my toe in this pool a little bit? That's your soul nudging you, saying that you're being invited to evolve forward. And you're being invited to evolve forward because this energy is native to you. It is natural to you to feel this way. When we're in our joy, even if that joy comes from like thinking or visualizing or fantasizing just for a second, what if my life could be like this? That's a sign. That's a breadcrumb. That's a guidepost. That's your soul saying, this is how you're meant to feel. So you have nothing to lose by taking, maybe a step forward in where this is leading you and where this is guiding you. But so often we don't, because we have a story of ourselves. And this is where I want to talk about ego need. And this is really important. So when we're talking about ego need, this is where we are staying triggered by our past trauma. And trauma comes in many, 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 many forms, okay? So trauma can be, deeply physical, it can be abusive, it can be mental or emotionally abusive, and any number of ways. There are so many different ways to experience trauma. But the way I define trauma is where you've had a break at any point in your life, and this can happen through many times in your life, but it usually happens to us for the first time when we're really young, where we have a point of departure, I call it. We have a break, we fragment from the wholeness of who we are. We come into this world and we're excited. We're like, what is this place? Look at all this stuff. Look at all these colors. Look at all these things. Look at all these people. Look at nature. Look at dogs. Look at trees. Look at the bee on the flower. Look at all this stuff. Wow. And we're filled with so much passion and so much wonder and such a sense of fullness because of our innocence, because that is what is leading the show at that point. And inevitably something happens. We experience something that says, it's not okay in this world. I don't feel safe in this world. I don't feel safe with me. And through this fragmentation, what I call an original cause moment, we start to fragment from self. We start to create a story so that we can feel more protected, so that we can feel safe. And we do this over and over and over again throughout life, because we learned early on that if we create a story, we can create a place to protect ourselves. We create what I call, they can be saboteurs. I really see them as protectors. We might create a persona or put on a mask. When I'm this person, I'm protected. When I hold this feeling or belief about myself and reality as a whole, I'm going to be okay. I'll be secure here. I'm stable here if I do that. We create a story. It's not the ego that's creating the story. You create the story. You decide that life is this way, that you are this way, and you start creating little fragment identities. I'm safe when I'm this person. I'm safe when I believe this. I'm safe if I can feel this. And this creates an impact on you that is a story at first that you keep adding to throughout life. And it is not the ego that creates this, but the ego sustains it for you, because all the ego is ever trying to do is protect you and keep you safe. So it's going along with whatever story you create for yourself. It will go along with that. And over time, it learns that This is who we are. So anything that deviates from that, we're not safe. Okay. So the longer you stay triggered by your past trauma, and the mind and body is ruled by fear, feeling like we're only protected if we're this person, we're only safe if we're this person. You'll never know how profoundly, got a hummingbird outside my window. You'll never know how profoundly this also affects your ability to move forward in life and to follow what your heart desires the most. And fear, this kind of fear, this ego need that then gets created to keep you safe, to keep you protected, this will keep you cocooned in a problem-based state of mind. It robs you of seeing your true potential, what you're really capable of. It locks your consciousness down into low-level creative frequencies, which means that you're just creating situations where you can survive, not thrive. And this is a big problem. When we have big, bold, juicy desires, we start feeling into those breadcrumbs and signposts and guideposts that the soul is leaving for us. And we might fantasize about what it could be like for a moment. But if you're paying close attention, and maybe you're already resonating with this truth here, you tend to shut it down because it deviates from the narrative of you that you created. Okay? I want you to take a deep breath and just forgive yourself right now for doing that. You know why? Because we've all done it. To varying degrees, we've all done it, and we all are continuing to do it. So I want you to just put your hands on your heart. Loosen up your jaw. Loosen up your shoulders. Roll your shoulders back and open up your chest. When we hear painful truths about ourselves, we tend to contract. We tend to close up our energy around the heart. We seize up energy in our jaw. I want you to just kind of breathe and let it go. Put your hands on your heart. And just forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for doing it. Only and ever, we are working with the best available knowledge that we have at the time. So you might have created masks, identities, fragmented pieces of you to feel protected, to feel safe, because that's the level of information that you were working with at the time. It's okay. How could you have known any different? You know different now, and that's okay. You get to work with a different level of information, a different level of accrued wisdom about your experience now, okay? But you can forgive yourself for what you didn't know before. And as a child, in terms of our cognitive development, how can you possibly know this stuff on this level, right? You can't. You're only trying to stay safe, okay? So when we stay locked down in this level of, yes, we can be creative, but we're creative about a level of just surviving. We're not really concerned with thriving, okay? You continue to see life then through a problem-based lens, rather than seeing the truth, that there are actually solutions everywhere. And these solutions are not necessarily outside of you. They can align outside of you, and they often do. But it has to be a level of self-recognition that, you know what, if I've created a problem-based reality, then I can also create a solution-based reality. So if all of these problems are in my life, I bet you dollars to donuts, they started in here. All your solutions are in there too. Okay. The solutions are inside you. They're already there. But it is a measure of being able to align with the truth that the solutions already exist inside of you. Any problem that you create, and yes, you do create them. That also says if you can create those problems, you create the solutions too. And there is a law of universal polarity. That to any energy that exists, there is an equal and opposite energy that also exists. It has to. It is universal law. It is cosmic law. So if there's a problem, there is a solution. They just exist in different kind of energetic spectrums, but they are part of the same energy. Okay. So you continue to make assumptions when you're in this problem-based level of awareness about what you're allowed to have. because of who the egoic mind thinks you are. So your true identity as a soul-led being is not a concern to the ego. It is not concerned with that. The ego only knows the story of you that was created by you, agreed to by you, and how we agree to a story of ourselves is we act in accord with that. The actions that we take, the deeds we endeavor to do in the outside world, they match the energy of what we feel inside. So we create accord, we create an agreement. And if you're agreeing to the story of you, which is usually one that is based on limitation, lack, want, need, if you're agreeing to that story of you, what it looks like is you are showing up in the world as that person all the time, saying things that align with that person. Your inner dialogue aligns with that. Your inner monologue, I should say, but sometimes for us, it's a dialogue. For me, it's a dialogue because I have a couple different voices in my head at any given time, having conversations and battling it out all the time. Maybe some of you can relate. You are showing up in the world and doing things that align with, hey, I'm only allowed to have this much because this is who I am. Okay. So your true identity is a soul-led being who is aligned with abundance, prosperity, that is not in lack or want at all, because there is no such thing as lack. This is a completely human construct, okay? But it is a limitation based on the story that you created for yourself. And the ego is just following along. It's taking orders, essentially, from you. At your own behest, you're saying, this is me. And the ego says, okay, well, this is the story that we have to stick to. And anything that deviates or varies outside of that, we filter that out. And the ego is very good at doing that. And not because it doesn't like you, not because the ego is trying to hurt you. The ego is just taking orders from you, saying, this is me, this is where I feel protected, this is where I feel safe. Anything outside of that, not safe, not familiar, not good, not protecting. So the ego says, okay, we'll make sure you don't see that. We'll make sure that those things don't filter in. And so the ego is very good at filtering that stuff out. So there's potentials, there's opportunities, there's people coming into our life all the time, situations, events, experiences that are there to evolve and drive our lives forward. But it is you and your energy and your story, which is not the truth of you, that is saying, nope. And we need to be able to take responsibility for this. Otherwise, change cannot happen. So are you resonating with what I'm saying so far? So you're going to continue to make assumptions about what you're allowed to have because of who the egoic mind thinks you are, based on your own story that you created through your own agreement, your own acquiescence. And it's very good at blocking out those things. Sometimes stuff filters through, but then you're like, no, that can't possibly be me because I'm this other person that doesn't have those things, doesn't come from that family. Doesn't ever think that that could possibly show up for me. And if it did, I wouldn't be able to keep it because I've screwed that thing up before. Look at my life. And here we go, corroborating our own story that we created for ourselves over and over again. And the real big part of this is that we need to be able to address where this is sticking in the body, because it does stick in the body. When we have thoughts and beliefs over time, these stories that we create for ourselves that become really concretized in our energy, meaning they're solid. These stories are solid, okay? It solidifies in the body because we hold it in such density in our thoughts and our feelings. So it also concretizes and finds home in the body. So I use the example of people with fibromyalgia a lot because I've known several of them. I've worked with more than a few when I used to do hospice care and volunteer for hospice. I used to do Reiki as a volunteer for hospice when I lived in California. And I also have someone in my family who has it. There is a rigidity of thought and very, very hard opinions, very stern attitudes, and an inflexibility towards life that tends to create an inner reality in the body where there is that rigidity as well and inflexibility. Okay. So until you address these things and the ego need and the ego stories and all these things, until you address that in the body, not just the mind, the body is also going to align in agreement with this story of you. And why is that? Because your entire field of energy, and actually everything in nature, seeks to minimize contrast. Nature is always looking for efficiency, simplicity, and harmony. You don't need to look too far past the natural world to see that. It's seeking to get from A to B in the most efficient and natural and easy way possible. It loves simplicity. It's only humans that love to convolute the shit out of everything. we love to complicate things. We're really good at it. And in fact, therein lies most of our creativity. We love to create all these problems. We're really good at it. We've had a lifetime to develop these habits of creating complications, right? And really convoluted energies. So nature is always looking for efficiency. Your field. So we all emit an energetic field. You know, very early on working with my spirit team and working with my guides, constantly reminding me that, you know, you're not a body, you have a body. You're not a body. The way we see you is just these moving balls of light, not even walking because they don't see us with legs. We're just these balls of light moving around, bumping into each other, having this experience of being incarnate in a human body. We have a body. That is not the sum total of you. You have a body. It's not that you are a body, okay? It is simply the vessel and the filter for your soul's experience in this particular lifetime, okay? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't discount the body because it's an incredible biofeedback mechanism. It's always telling us where there is contrast, where there isn't harmony, where there's an energy that doesn't match, where we're not in alignment, okay? And so our energetic field is always looking for this efficiency, this simplicity, this harmony. It doesn't matter whether there is harmony with something that you might assign value to as being good or bad. It's just creating harmony. It seeks to create harmony. It seeks synchronicity. So when we're talking about ego need and how this has created a story for ourselves, I'm going to get into a little bit more about ego need in a minute and how that's different from desire. The story of the ego, that it just keeps on corroborating for you and keeps you cocooned in. The ego is just helping you out. The ego didn't create that story, you did. The ego is helping you stay in that story by keeping everything else that doesn't align with that out because it creates contrast. And contrast is uncomfortable. Now, you might feel that contrast by saying, well, I'm here as this person. I feel like I'm this person, but I want this thing. I would like to have this in my life. And the ego says, well, let's eliminate that because that creates a contrast to the story we already have, that we already established. We already got this thing over here. If you bring that in, that fucks up the whole works. Okay. Again, the ego's not trying to hurt you. It's not trying to damage you. It's just taking orders. It's just doing what you were telling it to do because it's trying to keep you safe and protected. And if you feel safe and protected in the story of you, the ego makes no differentiation and has no discernment about whether, well, this story is bad for you. The ego doesn't even have that purview. It's not that sophisticated, okay? It can be, though. We can teach it. All it sees is contrast. Here you are over here, but you want this thing over there, two different energies. So let's filter that out. Let's try to keep that away as much as possible. Is this making sense? Is this landing with you guys? So I'm going to go into the comments here before I take this further. Resonating and connecting dots. Okay, cool. And I'm going to go into the Facebook group. How does that feel to hear that? And if you're going into feelings like, oh shit, I'm in trouble, or how do I fix this, or what do I do? You absolutely can fix it. You created this story of you, okay? And it's not you that needs fixing. Let's get rid of that notion. You're fine. It's the story that needs to be discarded, adjusted. You need to be able to look at the story of you and see where those cracks are, because they do not represent the truth of you. The story that you have might reflect your experiences in life and those emotional responses to the experiences that you've had in life. But your emotional experience does not always reflect the truth of reality. These are two different things. Your emotional experience, 95% of the time, does not reflect the truth of reality. It is a reflection of your perception, which is different. How you perceive reality is quite different from the truth of reality itself, okay? Yes, this is landing. The ego is the inner critic. Absolutely, Gail. It is the inner critic, the inner judge. And we all have an inner judge. We have a lot of different facets and personalities and masks that we wear that represent our inner judge. Some of us are perfectionists, right? Some of us are controllers. Some of us are people pleasers. Some of us play the victim. We have different facets, but it is all different permutations and identities that all lead back to our inner judge or inner critic, okay? My In Alignment and Thriving course, which by the way is 50% off right now, this goes into all this and allows you to see who your greatest inner saboteurs are and how to change those stories. That's what In Alignment and Thriving is all about. It's an amazing program. And you can take the saboteur assessment. Anybody who wants that, I'll give you the link so you can see what your saboteurs are, and it gives you a very, very lengthy description of all of those. Those of you who have taken that course with me, you know. Changing the narrative is painful, and I can attest to that because I have been going through a massive purging and clearing over the last year. I have no problem with being raw and vulnerable about this. I hit spiritual rock bottom. It started to happen around this time last year, and it went through most of this year, and I'm continuing to peel away layers. There are days where I have big, fat, ugly cries, and there are days when I'm like, okay, this feels good. This unburdening feels good because I'm finally done with these layers that felt so heavy, that felt like such a lie of me, such a mask, and now I'm free of that. So it is both, Ileana. It's painful, but then the liberation comes. When you surrender to it, it is a dance of release and renewal, release and renewal, because when it's just like when you declutter your house and you get rid of a bunch of stuff in your closet. You're like, you know what? Today's the day. I'm going to clear this shit out. It's going to Goodwill. I'm going to open up some room. How do you feel when you open up that space? It feels good, right? It feels open. You can, see more space in your closet. You have room to move around. Maybe you can store some other things that you wanted to find a new home for. You open up to, you know what? If I'm getting rid of a lot of this in my wardrobe, maybe there's time to bring in some new stuff that feels right. When I put it on, it just feels good. It really represents who I am now. Same kind of energy, right? Yes, it can be painful, but only at first. And when you unburden yourself, there is such a relief in the space of renewal and opening up. It is this unburdening, and you feel lighter. You just do. Trust me, it is painful. But there again, that's the story that we're telling. Changing the narrative is painful. Okay. What if you let go of how much truth you think is in that statement? Because that's your statement. Those are your words. Okay. And it's not to say that I'm trying to diminish your emotional experience of what's happening. But is that the full truth of that changing the narrative is painful? As I just illuminated, that's one side of it. And I'm not trying to diminish your emotional experience. That's your emotional experience. It's yours. Own it. But does it represent the full truth? No. Because renewal is incredible. feeling open and liberated from our past burdens is fucking amazing. And sorry for those of you who are new to me, I swear a lot. I'm a passionate teacher. Perception is not the truth, not entirely. Correct. Correct. Okay. So let's talk about the ego need then. This is how you really create this discernment and start to separate out desire from need, and understand these are two different energies because they come from different places. I already illuminated that. Desires, these are nudges forward that come from our soul-led level of being. This is the highest vantage point of self, saying, this is part of your destiny, to follow this breadcrumb, to follow this nudge, to see where this takes you. It may not be exactly where you think it'll take you. In fact, the universe has better plans for us than we could ever conceptualize. But when we're in a place of not trusting that, we don't feel like we wanted to follow the urgings and the nudges of our soul self, we stay contracted. We might still want things. We do still want things. It's our nature to desire things. It's our nature to want to evolve ourselves, because nothing in nature is stagnant. Nothing. Nothing is static. Nothing is final. No feeling, no experience, no event. There is no static or stagnant nature. Movement is part of the energy of 3D Earth. Okay, we're meant to move. We're meant to evolve. Okay, so it's very natural to want the next stage, the next level of anything. It is innate to us. Okay, but when we decide that we want something, how do you know it's an ego need? When you are able to very discerningly look at the story of you. And I'll be vulnerable here. I definitely have no problem throwing myself under the bus here and using myself as an example of this last year. I've been shedding layers and layers and layers of this theme in my life of being unwanted. Okay. And I'm not playing the victim. I'm just telling you, these make up my story of who I told myself I was, which I know now is not true, but these are elements of my story and how my story of limitation and lack got to be where it was. That when I came along as a tiny human, my brother, who was a year older than me, he had a cleft palate, cleft lip. He had to be fed through a tube for the first year plus of his life. And then I came along less than a year later after he was born. That's called Irish twins, by the way. Those of you who don't know, you're welcome. I had to be passed around from any family member who could take care of me. I wasn't held very much. I wasn't breastfed. I have because we don't have the cognitive development at that time to make that assumption that, or make that assessment that, hey, my parents were just trying to do the best they could, making sure I got my needs met. But, as an infant, we have lots of needs. We need to release certain chemicals in the brain, like oxytocin, which comes from being held and also from being breastfed, to let us know that we are desired, that we're wanted, that we're part of the human family, that we have community here. These get built up in the body, in the nervous system. And when they're not, they can create imprints later on that we are unwanted, rejected, and in some measure or degree, feeling at its most extreme, abandoned. Okay. And then feeling that as an infant, I carried that into my younger years of life and into my young adulthood, constantly being in solitude, feeling like I know what it's like to just be alone and I'm my own best company, and I don't need to rely on anybody else. And not surprisingly, I don't like human contact very much. It's not comfortable for me. I will hug people who I really enjoy being around, but it is not natural to me. I don't like to do it. I'm not a kisser, not a hugger. And how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if there's this energy that you hold in the body and it matches in resonance, it's in harmony with what you think and how you feel, then this theme of being unwanted will carry on and affect every key area of your life. And so I was looking at that and how it was being created as a story in what I do and what I share as an entrepreneur, how I built my business, and feeling like if I wasn't getting clients, there it is, unwanted again. And then having other themes that came up around COVID, and having a disconnect with my family, having different opinions about COVID, there was that rejection and unwanted wound again coming up. And that was my gift in the garbage. I got to see all of that. And I got to see where I was creating my desires, or what I thought were true, authentic desires, that were actually aligned with an ego need to feel wanted. So in other words, the things that I wanted to create, the things I wanted to call into my life, were not desires for the sake of these things themselves, but out of an ego need to complete a part of me that didn't feel whole, calling these things in as a means to compensate for where I felt inadequate, unwanted, rejected, abandoned, adrift, separate, alone, solitary. Okay. Does this differentiation make sense? So when we really start to have this kind of recognition of, oh, okay, so this thing I'm calling in over here, it's not because I desire to, and it could be anything. You might want to call in, incredible amounts of wealth. But if you feel very poor, and I'm not just talking about financially, meaning your wallet's empty all the time, although it is that too, but if you feel impoverished in your consciousness in one or more ways, that will show up in the reflections of daily life, your external reality. It'll show up as a zero balance in your bank account, okay? And so we might want to create loads and loads of money, but is that a means for you to feel complete where you feel incomplete or inadequate within you? Meaning, are you asking for this thing outside of you, externally, to complete something that can only be rectified by an internal correction? Does this make sense? So it has to be a shift in your awareness. It has to be a shift in your mindset. It has to be a shift in how you see yourself, how you value yourself, how you trust yourself, how you love yourself. What kind of esteem do you hold yourself in? This has everything to do with what is showing up in your external reality or what isn't. Are we following? Makes a lot of sense, Eleanor? And if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask away. I'm going to take a little water break here. Thank you for being vulnerable, Kathy. You're welcome. I really don't have any problem with it anymore. This is part of my shedding process. And, the theme and the story of being unwanted has a lot to do with how I would show up in the world as being someone who's very, very professional, got her shit together. I don't need anything, in other words, outside of me. That was more of a veil and a mask, keeping me from seeing how wounded I really was and how unwanted I was really feeling. And at a certain point, you have to come to this place of reckoning where it's not really anything outside of me that is going to make me finally feel wanted. Nothing is going to fill that hole outside of me. I'm never going to call anything in externally that is going to fix that wound. It started internally because the story I created for myself. So it's got to be remedied internally. And so where was I not wanting myself? Well, pushing towards more and more. I have to get this accreditation. I have to get this degree. I have to get this accolade. I have to get this diploma or credential or whatever, so that I can see myself as adequate, because I'm not otherwise. I have to have these external things show me that. And it's not even that trying to prove it to someone else. It's like constantly trying to prove it to myself. And until you suss that out, you're going to keep feeling that way. So you have to address it. You have to say, okay, where do I not want myself? Oh man, did that unravel some shit. So that's been my entire past year. I know I'm not done with it. I do know that 2023, when I look into that timeline, it already feels a lot lighter. I was talking with one of my clients in my Lotus Throne initiation that spring is going to feel lighter. It's going to feel like things are starting to open up. I definitely resonate with that. I don't know if anyone else does, but this has been a hell of a year. And when I say that, I really mean it, because it wasn't like dark night of the soul. It was spiritual rock bottom and personal rock bottom, in terms of taking a real mental and emotional inventory. So I have, you know what, here's the thing. I ask my clients all the time to stretch themselves. And so if I'm not willing to walk the talk myself, I'm not in integrity. So I have to put this stuff out there. I have to say it, because I know for some of you, and you know, when I work with ladies who have this anger, they have this rage that they want to connect with, and it's because we've been pushing away at parts of ourselves for so long because of masks that we've had to wear, that we've had to be a people pleaser, that we've had to play the victim, or we thought we did. We've had to be the good girl, the good wife, the good daughter, and play all these roles that we had no say so in setting up, right? And so there's a lot of anger and a lot of rage, and a lot of the stuff that's come through is ugly cries from pent up rage. That I let this go on so long, doing what I do. How did I not know better? And then I would breathe. It's like, this is the stuff I teach. How do I not know this? And I do. But sometimes you can take a high-powered lens and help and support others with that, but it's very hard to turn it on ourselves. This resonates 100%. Nothing outside of us will ever give us a sense of self. You're correct, Stacy. The self-love we cultivate in our own heart is the only energy that attracts love to us. Yes. What is naughty, what is nice, right? And we're still trying to figure that out. We, as women, we've had mixed messages about what we're supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do for a fucking lifetime, and for generations. And we're finally starting to say no to this because we're so tired of it. It's exhausting trying to keep up with all these ideals that are fantasies, and they don't exist. I don't know in whose mind they really came from, these ideals that women are supposed to live up to. It's all bullshit. And at the end of the day, we are only obliged to be at home with and in legion with our own truth, our own authenticity, our own integrity. And when we do that, we heal our wounding. So it's this play that the more we heal our wounding, the more authentic we are. Because then we're not living inside of these veils and overlays that we created. And also, the more we strive for authenticity, like I'm doing right here, I'm speaking my truth, I'm staying in integrity, I'm telling you what fucking happened for me, and I don't have any problem with putting it out there because I know it's of great service to someone, maybe many of you, who need to hear it. And that's in integrity with what I do. That's how I serve. And so if I can't be in integrity in that, and I'm always striving for this authenticity, every time I do this, every time I realize that vulnerability is my superpower, vulnerability is your superpower, and I can showcase that for you, that authenticity helps me heal more of my wounding. So it's this kind of beautiful inverse converse relationship, yeah? So just to summarize here, the ego need and going after what we want from that place, you've got to ask yourself, okay, first of all, that requires that I really look at my story. What is the story of me? And I will put that link for the saboteur assessment in the Momentum of Flow Facebook group. But you can also go to my my member vault. So if you go to my homepage, Kathryn Massell, and go to the link that I have there for Linktree, all my online programs, go in there and you go to In Alignment and Thriving, which is half off right now, by the way. You can scroll down the description of that course and the saboteur assessment link. It's this free link that you take the assessment, and it will let you know what your greatest saboteurs are. There's 9 in that saboteur assessment and lets you know what your greatest saboteurs are. And it gives lengthy descriptions about what this looks like in your life. And it's staggering how accurate it is. And this is the first part of taking the In Alignment and Thriving program, because we work with these saboteurs throughout the 11 modules of that program. It's an incredible course. It's an incredible course, and you'll learn so much about yourself, and you'll know your story. So if there are those of you who are saying right now, well, I don't know that story of me. I mean, I kind of do, but you want to know? Take that program, In Alignment and Thriving, and at least take the saboteur assessment, which is free. So you have to be able to look at your story. And the more objective that you can be, meaning when you are in the subjective vantage point of your story, that means you're feeling the victim, you're feeling wounded, you're feeling and not just reviewing these situations that allowed you to create the story and keep corroborating it over time, but you are reliving it. You don't need to do that. You never need to re-traumatize yourself or relive what was painful. When you are in your objective observer vantage point, that means you stay neutral. You stay curious. It's almost like you create this vantage point of rising above all these moving parts that created the story, the narrative as a whole. And you're saying, oh, that's how that got there. Isn't that interesting? That's when that came in. Oh, that makes perfect sense because this was going on in my life and all this other shit. And when we can stay in that objective observer vantage point, we're able to see and connect the dots in ways where we're not undone by it. We maintain a kind of neutrality because we're curious about, like, how did that get there? How did I start believing that was the story of me? And that's a really valuable tool to have. Insistence is resistance. Insistence is resistance. That's how I know it's my ego driving. Ah, okay. I was wondering, where are we going with that? Thank you, Eliana, for saying that. Insistence is resistance. And that's a part of your story, isn't it? And that's how you know your ego is driving. So that's giving you some self-recognition, some self-awareness right there. And none of this changes without self-awareness. So that's why we have to hunker down and call ourselves to account, look at our story, and yes, call ourselves out on our own bullshit. That takes some bravery. And like Ileana was saying before, that's painful at first. But then if you're a geek like me that really kind of likes shadow work, then you get kind of into it and you're like, ooh, yeah, okay, this is good. I want more of this. I want to see, because the feeling of elation and freedom and liberation starts to come through after doing the shadow work, after seeing the story. When I started unraveling my story of unwanted, yeah, it was fucking painful. Yeah, I had ugly cries. Some days I was down for the count. I wasn't able to do anything. And I was very sad. I was very undone by this. And then I let myself just have that day. And that's what we're doing in Momentum of Flow program, is understanding that those ebb days where we're really recognizing our story and saying, ouch, that hurts. And it is like ripping off a Band-Aid. We got to let ourselves have those days to grieve that part of self. And when we are women, we especially have to do this, because women, we feel it all. We're built for it. We just are. Emotionally, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, emotionally, we are the more evolved gender, because we can handle a lot of emotional and physical pain. We just can. We're just built that way. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a cruel joke. I don't think it is. But I also think that it leads to some of our greatest assets as women, that we can hold empathy and we can hold space and a lot of compassion for people on this planet, because we know what they're going through. And we're all empathic as humans, but compassion and the ability to hold compassion, that's really our strong suit as women. It can be, not for all women, but for men, we're built that way. We're built to hold that, because also we're built to hold incredible amounts of emotional and mental and physical pain. Could men be built for childbirth? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Every time, I've played nursemaid to my sick husband, which I'm doing right now, I realize, you're strong and mighty, and you could probably take me in a wrestling match, but you know what? When you got the flu, you're a baby. I'm just teasing. I'm kidding. But I think you know what I'm saying. I'm just trying to bring a little bit of lightness and laughter to this conversation. So when you can look at your story and be objective, and you can be in the objective observer vantage point, and you can start seeing these themes and start connecting the dots that this is not just one thing that came along one time. It's connected to many different situations and how you've responded and reacted to different experiences in your life. Because with this story intact, you're going to respond to life in a similar way over and over and over again. It creates a theme, it creates a story, it creates a trajectory and a narrative, right? And so then you can see where exactly your limitations are and what you think you're allowed to have. And it is exactly why maybe we've called some things in before. We were really good at manifesting something, but we couldn't keep it because we couldn't stay in the story. Because that story didn't jibe with the story we already had in place. We've been programmed to take on all the emotions. Yeah. Yep. Anything that is not love is bullshit. In truth, it's all love. And everything else is a distortion. We come from love and we return to love. Everybody, every soul. It's hard to believe that sometimes, but it's absolutely true. Anywho, so we can start to see where we might call things in because externally we're hoping to complete or compensate for a part of us that does not feel whole, does not feel complete, does not feel capable, does not feel adequate. And another reason why we push away at desires, especially when they feel really big and bold and juicy. And by the way, this is what we're being called to do now. That's why this information is so important. That's why it's so incredibly essential that we look at fear and ego need versus true desire that comes from our soul-led and soul-fed aspect of self. Because we're being invited to create bigger and bolder and juicier desires. We're being invited to evolve forward in the most exponential and accelerated ways. And we can't do this if we keep locking down our consciousness in the old story and imprint of ourselves. We can't do it. Those are two mismatched energies. They do not connect, right? So you might, from this conversation, be able to see some things right now. Why you don't want to call something in, or maybe you did and you couldn't keep it, couldn't hold on to it. You couldn't sustain that vibration, okay? Because it didn't harmonize with the story you already have. It didn't match. Another reason why we kind of repel or reject big, bold, juicy desires is we have an incredibly powerful fear of disappointment. And one of the themes that I powerfully unraveled this year for myself was disappointment. And I was thinking that it's disappointment in my business, it's disappointment in life. I'm 50, I should be doing this, I should be doing, I turned 50 this year, and I know that was a big part of it. But even though thinking that this disappointment that I was feeling was in all these things outside of me, it really centered on disappointment in myself. Why am I so disappointed in myself? And I drew it back, connected that dot back to the theme of unwanted. That if I'm disappointed in myself, maybe it came from a story I created that if I wasn't held as a baby, and again, we don't have the cognitive development for that, but the imprints in the body, the imprint goes into the nervous system at a very young age when we feel some sort of disconnect from our natural environment, which at that point is your mother and your father and whoever is your caretaker. That's your natural environment when you're an infant. And if you have any disconnect from that, it is logged in the body, in the nervous system. Okay. So that disappointment that I felt in myself was kind of a way that I could connect the dots and say, well, then as an infant, I must have felt like I was a disappointment to my parents. And that's why they didn't want me. And so if I keep feeling like I'm a disappointment to myself, then that's how I get to keep that narrative going. And we all grapple with the fear of disappointment, and we may have felt it in many, many ways. And feeling like a lot of times that when we're pushing from an ego need to call in something that we want, this is when we push, we force, we hustle, we create that insistence that's actually resistance, as Ileana so aptly said. But when it's a real true desire for the sake of it, because you know it's just your natural blueprint to evolve into more and overflow, that you're meant to evolve your experience forward by keep enhancing the already amazing experience of you as you already are. When it comes from ego need, we'll feel like we're pushing and forcing, and we feel like I'm not going to push and force this thing. I'm not going to do the work on myself or what I need to shift or change in my outside world, because I am so afraid of this not working out. After all my hard work, after putting my energy in, I'm so afraid of failure. I'm so afraid of disappointing myself yet again. We are left with this feeling that it just breaks our hearts so much. And we can feel into that heartbreak. And anyone who's had their heart broken knows exactly what I'm saying. Then we just stop right in our tracks right there, don't we? Who's been there? And you're so disappointed or afraid of being in disappointment that you just won't do it. Or you might start something and then you get in your head too much and you allow the ego's voice, the egoic mind, to take over and tell you all the ways it's not going to work out. And you start paying attention to that, you'll shut the whole thing down. How do I know? Because I've done it. I've done it many times. I refuse to do it anymore because I stopped creating that connection with my desires as something I push or force. It's more that I allow the energy to lead me. It's more when you are coming from a place of being in the objective observer of your desires and what drives life forward. The feeling is this: you choose what is choosing you. Because your desires and how we respond to them, it's like this beautiful call and answer from our soul. And our soul, by extension, is an agent of source. So it's like source saying, this is meant for you. If it's in your awareness and it makes you feel this way and it makes you feel good and joyful and alive and blissful and full of expectation and joyful anticipation, that means it's meant for you. And it's coming into your awareness via your soul, which is an agent of source, and is here to guide you and help you navigate in this lifetime. And if it feels good, it's meant for you. It's meant for you. It is choosing you. But we have free will here. So we have to make the choice to choose what is choosing us. And when you do that, there's a beautiful flow, there's a beautiful dance, there's this beautiful level of trust and faith that opens up, and it can be very, very enlivening and buoyant to our energy. But we have to allow it. We have to allow ourselves to choose what is choosing us. Whereas the ego need, it's going to feel like, I have to have this or else. And we chase it. The things that are aligned with ego need, we end up chasing or feeling we have to chase it. But you know what? It will elude us because it's an energetic mismatch. Okay. And it's not the thing outside of us that has to change in its vibration. It's your inner reality and the vibration of you that has to change. I can relate to the heartbreak, and I can relate to the feeling of being unwanted, yet I love my juicy desires so much. They're beautiful and bountiful. So I'm calling them in boldly. And we do need to be bold. Absolutely, Jante, 100%. We need to be bold. Does this take some practice and some doing? Absolutely. But It's so worth it to know and value and love yourself and hold yourself in the highest self-esteem possible, because there is no one ever outside of you who could ever hold you in that energy that is going to make you feel complete. You have to make that decision. I'm going to value myself. If I'm showing up authentically and I do my best work to follow the dictates of source, to follow where source is leading me, and I'm in integrity with that, I'm in authenticity with that, I'm feeling genuine, I'm speaking my truth, I'm speaking truth to power in my daily life, I'm being of service to those people who love me, just by showing up as myself. I'm showcasing a way of being that's possible for everybody. I'm showing up with love for myself. I'm showing up that in such a way where I value myself, I trust myself, I know myself better than ever before. You're showing up in a different energetic vibration. And you naturally magnetize different things to you in your outer reality because of that. People, opportunities, situations, synchronicities, serendipities, all those things will happen. All those things take place. And the only way to know it is to start doing it. And this is so, 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 so important, as I mentioned, because as women, we're being called up really to be in our power in greater ways than we ever have before. And we have an accelerated energy on this planet Earth that is hospitable to that in a way that it never has been on this planet before. So now's the time. Now is the time to really show up, to power up, to make your desires bigger and bolder and juicier, and to differentiate and discern. Is this an ego need? Am I chasing this? Do I feel like I have to have this or else? Is it constantly eluding me? That's the time to pull your energy back. Say, okay, what do I need to look at here? Why am I still feeling this way? Maybe there's another layer that needs to move away. Maybe there's another story of me, or a part or a fragment or a piece of a story that I need to look at here right now, because life is showing me this. The universe is showing me this. Why? That's not random. There's something here that if I'm willing to look at it, this is the exact breakthrough I'm looking for. When we are seeking these breakthroughs in life, chances are, if we're asking for that, there is something going on in your life right then and there that's saying, here's exactly where your obstacle is. This hurdle, once you get over this, the breakthrough is on the other side. And yes, it might be painful at first, because self-recognition, self-awareness, it's for the brave, it's for the bold. But the brave and the bold tend to be the most victorious, right? We've learned that throughout history as well. Yep, I start a lot of things and then lose energy and enthusiasm pretty quickly. It's frustrating. Well, can you start to see maybe now why that is, Barbara? Right? Maybe you can see now why that is. So it does take a minute to get in the habit of doing this and looking at this. It's not an overnight transition. It's not like you can have a one and done coaching session and figure all this out. It doesn't work that way. You've developed a lifetime of creating and adding to and corroborating and validating this story. To think you're going to unravel it in one night is a fantasy. Okay. It's going to take a minute. It's going to take practice. But I will tell you this, the more you do it, the more of an ease and flow it takes. If you understand something really, really important, that when you are in those painful moments of the unraveling, you got to give yourself that day to have that space, to be in the rage, to be in the place where maybe you don't forgive yourself or someone else, where you feel the victim, where you feel the sadness, you feel the despair, you feel the disappointment. Let yourself feel it. The reason why we revisit these themes so often in our lives is because we don't give ourselves the space to truly unburden ourselves of it. And we don't give enough credit to the mind-body connection, saying, if this is a recurring theme, that means it's so concretized in my body, in my nervous system, in my fascia, the connective tissue of the body, that we have to connect with where that is when we're feeling these things in the body and be able to guide this and move this through. So I'm committed to really never do any energy healing again that leaves the mind-body connection out, because it is so incredibly powerful. The mind-body connection is really the key to helping us be done with energies. And I say release, but it's not ever that we release these shadows and these negative polarized emotions. It's that when we proactively and appropriately process them in the body, they're just fuel. All energy is just energy, okay? And emotions, it's just energy. And so we get to transmute that energy in the body and alchemize it as creative fuel for helping us to create what we truly desire. Allow us to have the energy without frustration of moving towards where our soul is leading us through our own heart's desires, okay? The mind-body connection is, it can't be overstated. You can't, underplay its importance in helping the body to know where it has created distortions, created blockages, created fodder for chronic pain, chronic conditions. Where we have this kind of rigidity to life is where we have rigidity in our own body. Where we have blocks and obstacles that we see outside of us in life are blocks and obstacles that exist as, nervous system disruptions and distortions, or mobility impingements in the body. And you can very simply eradicate some of this stuff and move the energy appropriately through the body, so you don't have to keep experiencing these repeating themes over and over and over and over and over again, so that you're frustrated and exhausted again. And a lot of the exhaustion that we feel is because we do the shadow work, and we address the mental and the emotional and the spiritual, but we leave the body out. And I refuse to do that anymore because I really think that being a master of your emotions and a master of your reality, and calling in bigger and bolder desires, moving into overflow, it has everything to do with getting the mind and the body on the same page. And that's exactly what Momentum of Flow is all about. And that's why I'm teaching this program. And that's why I'm teaching it for 6 months, because it takes a minute to establish this. And because I wanted to make this available for as many women as possible, that's why I kept the price very low. Working with me one-on-one, that can cost you between $400 to $500 an hour. But when I do, group women's programs like this, I can offer it to you at a very reasonable price. So that's why I wanted to keep this open to women. I want to keep it open. You can join anytime over the next 6 months. It's $597 to join for 6 months. And there's also a 2-payment option or a 3-payment option aside from the single payment. But I want you to understand that you can teach your body how to safely guide any and all emotions, and to guide itself through fearful feelings so that you can appropriately process and integrate highly polarized emotions like fear, rage, anger, profound disappointment, despair, even sadness. But you can also teach your body how to safely guide itself and feel more powerful and masterful of your true nature, of being able to work with your desires and your ambitions, what your heart truly wants, what your soul wants you to have, and process this as something familiar in the body. And you're not just teaching the mind and the egoic mind a different narrative. You've got to teach the body how to hold that energy too. Because remember, we're seeking efficiency. Nature seeks efficiency. So if the mind and the body, the spirit, the soul, the emotional field, if everybody's on the same page, you have harmony. You have synchronicity. You have a symbiosis. And then we tend to attract what is natural and innate to who and what we are, which is abundance, which is prosperity, which is being able to call in our desires without rejecting them. And so I think this is maybe one of the most powerful programs I've ever taught. And I'm very excited about it. And I love the idea of, yes, the mind-body connection is so powerful in shadow healing, but it's even more powerful when we can teach the body that excitement, that joyful anticipation, that big, bold desires are safe to feel, that they can be made familiar and recognizable to your nervous system, so you don't reject what is allowing you to access higher and higher potentials of being. So not only that, but it feels really awesome. It feels incredibly empowering to be able to teach yourself how to do this. And so that's what Momentum of Flow is about. And if you are considering this program, we have our next live call on the 22nd. So we have 2 live calls every month in here. I don't give the hard sell on this. I'm just letting you know this is what we're doing. If you are a light with information around how this could work for you, how your reality could change by employing what I'm talking about here and really deepening into this conversation even more over the next 6 months, that's what this program is. And you get simple exercises to help you regulate your nervous system, to help you work with your vagus nerve, the largest cranial nerve in the body, which affects a lot more than you think. Now that I've been working with my vagus nerve regularly, my menopausal symptoms have really diminished. My brain fog has diminished. My posture is better. I can turn my neck with a lot more freedom. A lot of the tension that I have in my jaw, my mandible has gone away. Headaches that I've had have been greatly diminished. My nervous system doesn't get doesn't go into over processing mode where it feels like you're burning the candle at both ends, and you go into that frustration, which can lead to adrenal fatigue and a whole other cascade of distortions in the body. When you start to teach the body how to regulate itself, especially in a world where we have increasingly chaotic external stimuli, this is an incredible course just for that. But we're going to be very proactively and intentionally working with the body to help us process fear, and also teach it how to process the excitement and joyful anticipation of working with big, bold, juicy desires. What a revelation, right? So our next call is on the 22nd. Live, we meet for 2 live calls a month. That will change every month. The calls will be on Zoom, and they're also live streamed into our Momentum of Flow group. Like I said, it's $597, but you also have the option of 2 payments, 2 monthly payments of $300 or 3 monthly payments of $219. So I've made it really affordable. This is an opportunity to understand that you are here to be a creator, and nothing gets to stand in the way of that. Not your fear, not your story, not your fragmenting of self, not even where in the past you haven't valued yourself enough, trusted yourself enough, thought yourself capable enough. Those don't get to have the power in your life anymore, unless you allow it. And if you want to change that story, it's not going to come from outside of you. You've got to take responsibility for the story that you created, and then take full responsibility for changing it and creating a story that aligns with where you want to go, not with who you've been. And when you keep looking back, you got to remind yourself, hey, I'm not going that way. And our story that we live every day is a prompt for us to constantly look back. We want to look forward. I want to help you with that. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. I hope that this brought in some valuable insights. I hope that you will take this and really think about it. Let this kind of percolate in your energy. And so those of you who are watching in the Momentum of Flow group, this replay will stay in the group. If you're only watching, if you only caught part of this live, the replay will be sent to, if you're on my email list already, and you should be if you're watching this on Zoom, it will be sent as a replay tomorrow to the email list. But anytime I do a free masterclass, you'll also find it on my YouTube channel. So if you want to watch this again, you got different options for watching this again. Should be up on my YouTube channel maybe later tonight. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for staying open in your mind and open in your hearts. It has been my pleasure to be of service to you here today. And I want to wish you lots of love and peace. Bye-bye.